You're listening to LeaderCast, episode 136. Welcome to LeaderCast, Transforming Missions podcast with Tim Bias and Sarah Thomas, providing you with insights and resources you need to lead a movement of Jesus followers. This summer, we took some time to share devotions with you to help guide you and ground you throughout this season. Also, because we've been considering what we wanted to offer to you on the podcast and what was our next thing, given all of the changes that have been happening in the world. So today, we're going to reveal what's next. I don't know that there'll be many show notes, but as a reminder, you can find show notes for this episode at transformingmission.org/136. So, Tim, what's next for the podcast?
Well, we have a series of interviews around courage and strengths.
End of podcast. Yes, that is. So say more.
But what excites me about it is that all of us are gifted with certain strengths. And so we all lead in different ways using our strengths. And we've interviewed several persons with different strengths and how they've been leading through this pandemic, how they are courageous leaders using their strengths as they navigate leading in the church and in their communities in ways that make a difference. And it's interesting how people make decisions, decide to do what they're going to do. So, well, I'm excited about what's coming.
I am too. And so over the course of who knows how many weeks, we're going to have conversations with pastors and Christian leaders to explore exactly what Tim was talking about. How are their strengths guiding them? How are they getting in the way? What does courage look like for them? And how are other people lifting them up and guiding them forward? We've recorded a few of these episodes already. And the thing for me that has been just beautiful about these conversations, and it's part of what I love about the United Methodist Church that we are a part of, is we have different leaders, and these are leaders that are in a relatively small geographic area in and around Columbus, Ohio. So we haven't even branched out yet. And their diversity of thought, their approach to leadership, the way in which they interact with their leaders and how they make decisions, there's this beautiful diversity of who they are and how they lead. And part of what I recognized, and perhaps I'm grieving in anticipation, is part of what I have loved about the denomination that I've been a part of is that diversity. That diversity of thought, that diversity of the way that we express our theology and how we even speak about Jesus and interact with one another can be so very different. And yet we are connected to the kingdom of God and to Jesus Christ in and through one denomination. Why I said perhaps I'm grieving in advance is there's some significant conversations coming for our denomination in the next year. And after the conversations that we had, I thought, gosh, I really hope that we don't lose that, because it's such a beautiful part of who we are. And it's such a beautiful part of what the church offers to our local communities and to the people in those local communities. I'm going to start preaching, so stop me. Maybe I already did.
Thinking about what you've just said, through the interviews we've already had, we're actually putting together resources for people to be able to listen and to discover their own ways of leading, especially if they've not had any exposure to strengths, Clifton Strengths, or if they're still working on being a courageous leader. The people that we've been interviewing are really models for leadership, as well as models of the strengths in which they have been gifted.
Yeah, they certainly are. I think it's easy for all of us to get focused in our little corner of the world, especially in this season when we're not traveling as much, we're not going places as much. And it's been really fun to hear how not only the innovation that is happening and the things that are stretching them in leadership, I don't want to give away too much, but also how clearly they're focused on disciple making. Now, I say that. We may have, skewed? That's the word I'm looking for. We may have skewed the conversation a little bit because that's really the focus of how are you making disciples and what is happening and how are you doing that? And for me, it goes back to something that I started working on, I don't know how many years ago, of looking at how do the different Clifton Strengths focus on disciple making. And when we talk about disciple making, there are 4 key things that we talk about. We talk about hospitality. How are you reaching out and receiving new people? We talk about offering Christ. How are you inviting folks to make a commitment for the first time? That might be a commitment through baptism, profession of faith, and then ongoing smaller commitments. And then the P is practices, and those are the spiritual disciplines, the things that we often think about when we come to discipleship. And then the E stands for engagement. E stands for engagement, and that's really about engagement in your local community and how are you serving others. So together that acronym spells hope. And it's just a way for folks to remember what is needed in disciple making and how different that is for each of the conversations that we've already had. And yet still there's this thread. It's all focused on Jesus. So we hope that these interviews are going to be an opportunity for you to celebrate your own uniqueness in leadership and how are you going about being a courageous, Christ-centered leader in this time using your strengths. Part of what I have seen, and Tim, I'm sure that you've seen this as well, is our pastors and our local church leaders expecting more of themselves than is possible in this season, or beating themselves up, to say it in a negative way, about what can't happen. And I really hope that not only is this an opportunity for us to celebrate the people that we're having a conversation with, but that in each conversation there's going to be something that you resonate with or you're struggling with that will serve you and help propel you in your leadership and be a source of encouragement in this season.
That's the reason I said it might be a resource for us.
And then beyond that, where my brain went when you said that was a couple of our interviews have specifically talked about resources. And I've just thrown one out to you as well in terms of strengths-based disciple making and what does that look like to help folks really claim how God has gifted them with their unique strengths and how can they live into being disciples. We're excited if you haven't already been able to tell.
What I'm hoping is that this can also be a word of encouragement. I have written over and over, and we've said it some on podcasts, that really those of us who are leaders at this point in time, through pandemic, through the other issues that we're facing in our culture and in the church, it's not by accident. We're leaders here for this point in time in history. And it's not like any other time in history. So there's not a whole lot we can read about or receive that says this is how it was done. So what we're hoping is that some of these podcasts will be gifts of encouragement or words of encouragement to let you know that when you're thinking a certain way, there are other people thinking that way. Or when you're making decisions in one way, there are other people who are in the same situation and making the same kind of decisions. So that there is some kind of, if I may say, hope for stepping into the future as you are working to continue to make those disciples, grow Jesus followers, lead your church, engage in the community. That's what we want to be able to provide for you.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, again, thinking about the interviews that we've already done, folks have been pretty transparent about what's been hard and how they've been able to navigate through that. And so I hope that will be, maybe it's not the other side, but I hope that will also be an encouragement to you, that if you do find yourself in a place where you're feeling stuck, that there just might be something that one of these folks offer that you go, hello, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I pause in that way? Or, gosh, that's a great way to just take a step back and look at this in a different way. And you just needed someone else to say it in a different way. So we hope it'll be a source of encouragement. I think you're hearing that loud and clear. If you didn't, you just did hear that loud and clear. This is going to be another relatively short episode. The last thing that we thought that we'd talk about is just the format. We've already said that they're interviews. There's a basic format that we're following for each of these conversations, and that's really what we hope that they are. We say interviews, but they're really conversations.
So actually, the first part of that conversation is just a kind of an introduction of the person with whom we're having the conversation, who they are, where they're serving, and maybe part of their idea of what it is to be a follower of Jesus. Yep. That's how we get started.
And then we transition into their Clifton Strengths and talk a little bit about their top 5 Clifton Strengths and how those Clifton Strengths are coming to life specifically around discipleship. And so we'll talk about hope. Now, hear us. We could have 1.5 hour long conversations with each of these individuals if we did all of this on every single episode. So you're not going to hear everything that we're walking through right now on each episode, or they'd be 90 minutes long and you probably wouldn't listen to them. So we're continuing to try and keep them to about 30 minutes. But after we talk about their Clifton Strengths and discipleship, then what might we talk about?
Courageous leadership, courageous decisions, what it does take in terms of those strengths and discipleship, and what it takes to make the decisions that need to be made for this point in time.
Yeah. And the last part, we wrap up each one with rapid fire questions just to have some fun and help you to get to know the person that we're interviewing. I'm going to stop using that word. We're having a conversation with a little bit better. And that part has been fun too. We'll leave you hanging on that. I'm not going to say anything more about what those rapid fire questions are all about. So, Tim, anything else that you want to offer to folks?
Sarah, at this point, what we've done with these conversations has actually kind of filled a void for me when I don't get to be face to face with people and having the conversations. Part of what we've been able to do is kind of reconnect with people. And I'm hoping that these podcasts will help not only those of us who know the people we're having the conversations with, but even the people around them being able to say, they're talking about my church, or they're talking about my community. And I'm really glad to hear that or understand that. That's another way of making connection where we've not had those connections over the last few months.
Yeah. You all can't see me right now, but I have been smiling all morning for that very reason, that it's an opportunity just to check in with people and see what's happening. And yes, there've been lots of conversations, but to actually see them and hear more in depth about what they've been up to is a gift to us. And I think it will be a gift to you as you continue to live out your faith in this season and well beyond. We keep saying in this season, and I keep thinking, what if somebody goes back and listens to this a year from now, 2 years from now, and we're no longer in this season? Everything will still apply. because there
Right.
is always something that is happening around us, and there will be a new season. Something else will be changing. And so, while we might be focused right now on COVID-19 and on the efforts around anti-racism and all of those things that are happening in our country, and a presidential election, the things that are swirling around may be unique to this time, but underneath each one of those, in different seasons, they show up in different ways.
Well, the strengths don't change.
Right.
And the call to discipleship doesn't change.
Right.
It's just the context.
Right. And the courage likely doesn't change.
Right.
You will continue to need to be a courageous leader, regardless of what is happening around us. Well, we look forward to next week sharing with you our first conversation around courage and strengths in leadership. And until then, Tim, how do you want to end it?
Yeah. Go lead a movement of Jesus followers.
Oh, maybe Tim should do this from now on. As a reminder, I've mentioned a couple of things as we've been sharing with you these past 20 minutes around Clifton Strengths and strengths-based discipleship. So on the show notes page at transformingmission.org/136, you'll find links to those resources. And as always, you can reach out to me, and happy to have a conversation with you in more depth. And with that, if you don't have anything else to offer, Tim, I'll say to you, go lead a movement of Jesus followers. Bye for now.